Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Rene, and Rene has written a book called The Elephant in the Family Room. And I don't normally start with the title of the book, but it was a great conversation. It was a great talk, and there was lots of lessons that could be learned. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Thank you for joining me. Could you just give people a brief overview of who you are?
Thank you, first of all, David, for receiving me in your podcast. It's a true privilege to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, my name is Rene Sonneveld. I'm a Dutchman living in Uruguay. I wandered professionally around the world until 23 years ago. I decided finally to make this my home base. For those who do not know Uruguay, it's a little country between Argentina and Brazil on the Atlantic Ocean. The capital is Montevideo. It's an absolutely great country to live. So I am a executive coach, David. That's how I define myself now, and I work with executives, which you could expect. The fun part is I work a lot with sports teams and athletes in the mental performance space. And my true specialty is working with large family systems. So families that own businesses and where whatever doesn't sit right at the moment within the family might have an influence on how the business is managed and often also how the business is being destroyed.
Yeah. So I'm curious about this because on a micro level, I think we have some possible similarities in our roles. So I did used to do executive coaching. I don't do as much now, but I specialise in head injuries. Is my full-time job. I do head injury rehabilitation. And one of the most challenging aspects of that role, because this isn't performance related, but it's family dynamics. Because if somebody's had a severe accident and I'm there to help establish the rehabilitation team and what the rehabilitation schedules are, I have to try and enable the family to let go of who the person once was. And every family has its dynamic, from the siblings to the parents to the grandparents, who all have an input and opinion on who this person was, but they have no grasp on who that person's going to become as they recover from their accident. So sometimes a large amount of what I'm dealing with is navigating the family, the issues within the family, especially if there were those relationships already had difficulties before the accident. And I wondered, does that transfer into some of the problems that you run with business? That it's the family dynamics amongst the siblings, the parents, and how they all see themselves.
Yeah. David, and I will come back to your question. There's something you mentioned which created a very powerful reaction with me, and I like to share that with you. Um, you spoke about head injuries and not really knowing, when a person overcomes this injury, who he will be, let's say, in so many words. Um, my first wife, she had a brain cancer,
So,
and um, and there was a big swelling in her head, and she got in coma. And the doctor said, "Look, we need to take some of that brain mass away. If not, she's going to pass away in 12 hours."
yeah.
And between all this chaos I had in my mind, and the pain and the angst and fear and all kind of deep emotions around that, one of the thoughts I had was, if they do that and she wakes up, who will she be?
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. It brings out a thought that for 25 years I didn't think that thought. And very, very interesting. I can completely empathize with that work that you're doing. So
It,
very interesting.
yeah, it's very difficult because I say it's very difficult. It's I don't know how to do any other job. So, but I always have this thing that I say. And fortunately, I've been with the same two people now for quite a long time, so I haven't had to do it again. But I used to say that I tell this lie that it's when I meet people, which is that it's nice to meet you, and it isn't. It's not nice to meet anybody because the only reason I'm there is because somebody close to you
Oh,
has had the most horrific accident, and I'm actually the last person in the world that anybody wants to meet. But I
wow.
but I turn up, shake your hand, and assure you, and it's nice to meet you, and I assure you that everything's going to be as well as can be possible. But the only reason I am there is because at some point before you met me, you took a phone call from somebody that informed you the worst thing that you could have ever imagined has happened.
Oh,
And that's the only reason I'm
very, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's the only reason I'm in your life.
Wow, wow.
And
So, yeah, I can, I can see that.
and
So,
it is sorry,
yeah,
yeah, I was just going to say it's incredibly difficult because the situation you with your wife for 25 years ago, somebody has to tell you the truth and then say, and what do you want to do about that?
yeah,
It's I you know they're conversations nobody ever expects to have.
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, life does not really prepare you for that, and I'm sure that the families you're meeting, they're not prepared to deal with that either.
No, and so yeah, so that it was that kind of because of those dynamics where this is where I thought that we may have parallels in how we have to manage
Yeah,
expectations, family dynamics, because there is a circumstance that needs to be resolved, and is it a business problem or is it a family dynamic problem?
yeah.
And
So,
sometimes,
yeah. Yeah. So the space I'm working in, it is definitely a family dynamic problem. I work with families who own businesses and significant health, and but not on the spreadsheet first. I focus on what I call the invisible capital: the trust, the identity, the communications, role clarity. Because most family enterprise, they do not fail financially, they fail relationally. It's very interesting. The most successful companies in the world are family-owned businesses. And actually, I think more than 70% of all businesses globally or GDP is generated through family-owned businesses. And I think 86% of the global population works in family-owned businesses. So it's a huge, these are huge numbers. And what I do is my work sits on this intersection of leadership, governance, and human psychology. So most family business don't break because of what is said, because actually they break because of what remains unsaid.
yeah,
For example, the father who never who says or never says that he's afraid of letting go. 80 years old and he still wants to micromanage the company. Or the daughter that never says she feels constantly evaluated by her brothers. Or the siblings that never tell each other that they trust each other. So conflict in families disguises itself as a strategy, debate, or governance friction, but underneath it's the unspoken emotions. And the families that do not know how to address this, they are in big problems. I'm sitting with families who have world-class governance structures, beautiful designed family constitutions, shareholders agreements drafted by excellent lawyers, and they're still tearing each other apart because you know governance is maybe the architecture, but communication is the foundation everything else sits on. And if the foundation is cracked, if people cannot speak honestly to each other, the architecture doesn't hold. It just looks good from the outside, right? Wow, great family. But this is where what I call the elephant in the family room, where the elephant lives. It lives in this gap between the meeting agendas and the real conversations. And most families have learned, sometimes through generations, to walk around it rather than name it. And so, actually, in a weird way, there is this a strong parallel in what you're doing and what I'm doing, what you're doing with families in a very different realm, and what I'm doing. Um, you know, and I want to make an argument that I believe with everything I have, after all these years working in this field, in family enterprises or in families, communication is not a soft skill. It is load bearing.
Yes.
That-
Yeah. It is
You
because
know,
people
yeah,
can see what they think is the problem, but they will not talk about it.
no, no. They, families, people, um, the family's ability to speak honestly to each other with care, with safety, with respect, is the load bearing wall of any enterprise, of any family enterprise, family owned enterprise. So you can have that great estate planning and governance, but if the wall is compromised, those structures get overloaded and they fall. Even if the other walls, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is a metaphor that I do not use lightly. I've seen it happening many times. Families that have every legal instrument in place and who still could not complete a succession because no one could say what they exactly feared. And the business, in the end, pays the price for what the family cannot say. And then, since the business collapses, now the family members, they hate each other, right? So the family, they pay the price, obviously, in the end, because, well, you can lose money. Money is something which flows. Sometimes you have a lot, sometimes you have less, whatever, but it's money. But family relationships that break, that is the real damage out of that. And families that break in such a violent way, very often they stop talking to each other, and it doesn't come together. You see those families where you have, one branch here and one branch on the other side, and they have this iron wall between them.
And I think it's more common than people realize when you have, like you say, these businesses that have done well, and then the parental side of it, that whether it be the mother or father, whoever passes away, and like you say, the succession goes down, and before you know it, the brothers and sisters, even sometimes the aunts and uncles, they're at war because they're all fighting in some degree, I guess, to express who they are within the business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, why does communication fail? Why in families that love each other, that build something extraordinary together, right? A family business, and it can be a mums and pop store in the corner, it can be a restaurant, or it can be a mega enterprise. And why can a conversation about, for example, profit sharing or dividends turn into a decade-long estrangement, right? And here's what I found consistently across families from Brazil to Singapore to Switzerland. When they're talking, they think they're arguing about the topic that's on the table. For example, dividends, or who's going to be the new CEO in the company, or whether we sell the company. But underneath, they are protecting something deeper. Someone is protecting their sense of relevance.
Mm.
They built this. Do they still matter? Someone is protecting their security. Will my branch of the family be okay? Someone is fighting for respect. Does anyone value what I contribute? So someone needs to feel fairness is real. Am I seen as an equal? And someone often quietly, sometimes painfully, is asking, do I still belong here? And when those needs are threatened, people don't respond rationally. Cognitively, they can't. They avoid, they attack, they go silent, they form alliances, they fight, right? And so if you do not resolve those emotional undercurrents, you have a huge problem. And the diagnostic perspective that I bring to every family I work with before asking anything like what are we debating is kind of I ask each individual, what is each person, what are you protecting? And that's often the question that unlocks the real conversation in families.
What I'm trying to, because here's something I'm finding interesting as I'm listening to you, is that there must be at some level an awareness of the problem for anybody to reach out to you in the first place. And the thing that people might not understand very well is because, well, if you know there's a problem, why don't you deal with it? And and I don't think, because people don't kind of understand how family dynamics work like that, because it can be such rivalries and fear of not being heard, and like you say, protecting something, and they don't always know what they're protecting. That it seems counterintuitive that, well, if we know there's a problem that we have to ask somebody to help us, why can't we fix the problem?
Yeah. And why can't we, right? Because the reality shows that it's incredibly hard for families to address the things that are, that's why I call this as a metaphor, the elephant
Mm.
is present, right? But sometimes this elephant is so full of energy, it became so big, they don't know how to take some of that energy out of it and deflate it so they can create space for real conversations because the anger already happened. And there's so many examples. I give you a few ones, just kind of
Yeah,
as a context. Let's say you have a family, three kids, and one kid was always the golden boy.
yeah,
He could never do wrong. And the other kids, they were always fighting for attention from the parents, right? The golden boy becomes the CEO. The other two kids, they are shareholders as well, right? Everybody got 1/3 of the shares, 33%. Now, 25 years, forward this movie, um, the golden boy is the CEO of the company, but now he has to deal with equal partners. And there's this lot of, unfinished business from the past that now they start discussing it through a business lens. It has nothing to do with the business. It has to do with personal issues that were never resolved because of the parents. It's just a simple example. And they come to me and say, look, we have a problem. We don't know really how to deal with that. A family where maybe some of the siblings, they did a business deal that went sidewards and they're angry with each other. They don't talk to each other because of the business deal. It doesn't have to do anything with the bigger family enterprise, but that business deal. Okay, now just picture this. You have a family, and it doesn't have to be only a wealthy family. This could be for any ordinary family as well. You have mom and dad, and they have whatever, 5 kids. And two of the kids, they can't talk to each other. They can't see each other in the eyes because of this thing that went wrong. What do mom and dad that were modestly or super successful in life, what they do want more? They want to have the Christmas party with all the kids around the Christmas tree and all the grandchildren. Well, one of those two kids will always find an excuse not to be present. So the family cannot be full anymore. What is the money in the world worth if you cannot,
yeah.
have a happy family or a family that gets along well? This is a typical example. Or, a sibling that calls me and says, Rene, I really need you to work with my family because my father needs to understand certain things because if he's not there, I don't want to fight with my nephews. We need to organize this now while my father is still alive, and so on and so on. And so there are many issues that creep into a system that the families, it's just too hard for them to deal with it. And if one of the family members deals with it, the other family members that are angry or they feel frustrated, they might think, oh, there he comes with his agenda. So that's why often they bring in also this neutral person, this coach, this coach facilitator to get the flow moving again. I can give you so many examples. I could exhaust the show with examples.
Um, where
And
was?
just go back to the Bible.
Yeah,
You know, we spoke about Stonehenge
yeah,
and the past, and then go to the ancients, go to the stories of families and struggle and power in the old Greek stories or the biblical stories, and it's all about ego
yeah.
and judgments and jealousies and they still exist, these human emotions.
Well, because I mean, like you say, I mean, everything. I mean, from Thor and Loki, two brothers always arguing, trying to get their father's attention and love. Game of Thrones that was so popular on TV for the last few years. It's all about, yeah, just all about family arguments, just family hating family against, and it's all power, all trying to be heard, all trying to be listened, and just everybody, yeah, just no, none of them willing or able to cooperate for fear it will jeopardize something they perceive they're holding on to.
Yeah,
And like you
absolutely.
say, since the beginning of time, people have we've struggled with this. That there is something about sibling rivalries and family dynamics that create that elephant in the room. And unfortunately, nobody has ever petted it and learned to love it and teach it party tricks to impress the rest of the family. So it just becomes an obstacle that squeezes everybody out.
Yeah. I mean, there are families that get it right intuitively, obviously, but there are many families, and at all levels, suffering. Everything that calls itself a family might have that. The thing is where this situation gets aggravated if they also have an economical interest in common, a business. And that's kind of the realm where I work when families own a business, can be big or small, because the business suffers from those family problems. Because in the end, they will the business is the scapegoat of the discussions they they have.
So, where was how did you get into this?
Hmm. I love this question, and it is so it's so fascinating life and the curveballs that life throws you, and I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly of life, and I'm extremely appreciative of life. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. I have five wonderful kids. I have a wonderful partner, and so I absolutely. So anyhow, curveballs. So I was working with a bank in New York, and I was their family and corporate governance champion. And so I worked with large family systems, helping them on structuring their legacies, their governance, their foundations and trust and dynasty trust and so on. It was kind of talking with families about, what would you like to happen after dad's lifetime and how you want to organize yourself and so on. But it was rather technical, all that stuff, right? Legal and documents and rules and regulations and governance statutes and so on. And what I realized at one point particular, I was working with a family in Chile, in the south of Chile, and they were, discussing these issues, and I was sitting with the 80-year-old patriarch and matriarch on the table, and there were also the kids. I mean, the kids, 55-year-old,
Yeah.
well-educated kids, but they're still the kids, right? And so we were talking about the structures they had and whatever, and you felt there was a tension in the room. There was kind of there were emotions. You could see the elephant, right? I felt an elephant in the room, but I had no clue how to deal with that. I was concerned that if I would address this elephant, this emotion that was present, it would be like me stepping on a landmine. I wouldn't know how to diffuse it. It would explode in my face, and the bank would lose a client. And so I felt really frustrated because I was not serving my client at the best. And I felt also there was a lot of frustration in the room because, there came this foreigner from abroad, came to their house, and they was talking only about the technical issues, but not about the adaptive challenges that were really present in the family. And so after that meeting, I had really a deep kind of self-talk with myself, and um, and that brought into me a process of, okay, what do I need to learn to understand emotions now to deal with that? So I didn't have a clear pathway, but I took what I thought was the most straightforward manner, is to understand what are emotions and how do they work chemically in the body. And so I studied neuroscience. And when I had done that and I understood kind of, what's the chemistry of emotions and how does that work, I started to study sociology to understand how how groups
Mm.
interact. And then I studied high performance sports psychology to understand what creates team effectiveness. And so I went in this weird goose chase of knowledge. And I was acquiring knowledge, but I still didn't know what to do with that. There was kind of a lot of, I almost felt like a jukebox, right? You take
Yeah,
them, record A56, and you get record A56, and then you
yeah,
go to another record and so on. So like these old jukeboxes. You and I, we still know what it is.
oh,
Half of the
wonderful
population that
machines,
listen to your show,
wonderful
they have no
machines.
clue.
Yeah, but
You
yeah,
know,
wonderful.
people's, it's like the old Spotify, okay? That's what it is. Anyhow, so one day I was sitting with a client in Germany, another patriarch, also in his 80s, and he said, Rene, more than a father to my children, I'm their coach. And this is a weird thing. Of course, I heard about coaching, but you need to hear it from someone else. And I realized that, wow, coaching, that's actually kind of the wrapper, the context in which I can put all my
Mm.
experience, all my knowledge, and serve my clients. And so I started to study coaching and what it means and the coaching techniques, and helped me so much in bringing it all together and then wrapping it in a way which families can understand what I'm doing. And so it started with a conversation in Chile. It continued with a conversation in Germany. And I had this road of self-awareness. I must say, I'm not a very quick study. It took me about 6, 7 years to figure it out. But once I got there, it's the best decision in my life, the best discovery.
Yeah, but it's interesting you say it took you 6 years because these family dynasties haven't figured it out for generations. So you
That's true.
know,
Yes.
so it's all relative. It's So, but how did you?
Well, I mean, now I have to tell you a short story, and it has to do with Picasso. And you think Picasso. So Picasso, he was sitting in a restaurant in Paris, in a bistro, and he was not yet super famous, but he was already kind of famous. But so there was a lady, and she recognized him, and she saw that he was scribbling something on a serviette, on a paper napkin. And so she walked to him and he said, Mr. Picasso, you're Mr. Picasso. Yeah, I'm Picasso and whatever. I saw you scribbling. Could you give that to me? Right. And he said, yes, 1,500 euros or whatever, French francs at that time. And he said, what you mean, 1,500 French francs? This was like 2 minutes. Yeah, but it took me 30 years to get there. So
Yeah,
when you say it's 6 years, I
yeah,
mean, there's behind that my life and professional experience of, 30 years before that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I'm. There's certain industries, and I couldn't name them all, but it's one of those few areas where you're not paying me for what I do, you're paying me for what I know, because I can bring something to the room in 10 minutes because I've spent 50 years getting here.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and it's not a skill. You mentioned something about when you were talking about the elephant in the room, is that something that is so misunderstood and understated is the ability to listen to what somebody is saying but hear what they're telling you. And it's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that in coaching was one of my big, great breakthroughs was to understand what listening actually means
mm,
and the different levels of listening we have. And interestingly enough, today I would say that the number one, and this sounds counterintuitive, the number one communication tool we have as a human being is to listen, not
yeah,
to talk.
it's,
And since I learned that, I feel so ashamed
mm,
of my career as an executive because I was a terrible listener.
mm. It's I still I I still have to remind myself when I'm talking to somebody that I have to listen. And then when somebody is talking to me, I have to remind myself to ask the question, what are they trying to tell me? Not what are they telling me? What are they trying to tell me? Because when we don't know ourselves the root of what is bothering us, we can't explain it. And that I found with family dynamics that you could actually be dealing with an argument they had when they were 6 years old. And
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, but they're 45, they're 60 now. It's just like, yeah, but this has been simmering since then.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of we all build our mental models
Mm,
as humans. Everybody has mental models, and there's no good, bad. There's just the way we make sense of the world. And that's a great thing that we have those mental models because we can take quick decisions on action. If we want to eat something, mental model, I take bread, whatever. Um, and so in those mental models, the way we make sense of the world, there's this pattern from since we were 6 years old, when Johnny did something
yeah.
or Susan said something, it automatically triggers with me a reaction. And we never overcame that.
Mm,
And it's still there.
yeah.
It's part of our mental models. And so the big trick here is to create empathy and helping people to see the same situation, but through a different perspective, through a different lens. In a, and actually, I ask people to walk around the situation because the situation, a river is a river,
Mm-hmm.
a bankruptcy is a bankruptcy, a crook is a crook. I mean, that doesn't change. But the way how we look at it, this is what we can control, that we can change.
Mm.
And so we have these patterns, and sometimes it's necessary to break them and help them, people overcome them. By the way, David, it doesn't take 10 minutes. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It takes a long time, but um, but I think the kind of again I think something that like you say that there isn't unfortunately a 10-minute solution, and family dynamics will roll on until the next generation passes it on. What you can hope for is that the glue stays bound together long enough for it to become the next generation's problem. Um, but yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah.
no, no, sorry.
No, and that glue, it's interesting that you mentioned that metaphor of a glue that keeps the family together. That's what I call invisible capital. So very often families they measure themselves, or or successful executives they measure their family on kind of the wealth they created and the bank account and how much dividends or interest they generate, and we're doing great. We made another X amount of money, and that's all measurable, right? You can take the bank account statements, you can look at the balance sheet, and well, we are happy, we are successful. But the real thing that keeps families together, it is an invisible balance sheet, which you cannot, keep in numbers, which has to do with how do we network, the family name, how do we learn together, what's our purpose, what are our shared values, what is, how do we progress in life together, how do we align all the things. And so I created a system to measure invisible capital.
Okay.
And so kind of an alternative balance sheet on which you also can look at, how are we doing today? And based on this, how will we do in the future? It's hypothetical, of course, but it creates wonderful internal conversations within the families.
So, what do you think inspired you to care?
Well, I always have, I have my own family history. For my father's side, where things went wrong, and because of that, my grandfather never spoke with his brothers again, and I'm totally estranged from that family. Not for a bad way, but I mean, it was so apart that
Yeah.
you know everybody went their own way. I've seen it in the family business of my late wife in Argentina, where there were kind of major problems that caused also business succession issues. And then I worked a lot in family-owned businesses, also from non-family members, but family-owned business where I was the CEO in the business, or high-level executive, and I saw all the stuff that went wrong, that didn't work, where there were infights, which in the end I was from an outside view say, is this really necessary, guys?
Mm.
We're so privileged,
Yeah.
we're so good. I mean, my God, let's go to some other places in the world and see what's going on, and then maybe we can relativate and get some common sense back. Of course, that's what I felt, but I didn't know how to express that. And then I moved into banking, and I went into family governance aspects. So I start to address these issues that I already had seen from the inside, but from the outside. And finally, as I mentioned, I was a slow learner. It took me 30 years to realize that my true path was something
But
was something different. And now that I'm here, I love it.
the reason I'm curious is looking through your career. I would say that financially it's always done okay. It's done well. You know. So materialistically, I would say that you seem to have enough awareness that my life is doing okay. And you've met people no doubt wealthier than you, and you've met people no doubt not as wealthy as you. And so, but the thing that I'm still trying to get to kind of the edge of is, why do you care?
Why do I care? Well,
I,
truly, because yeah, my why do I do
no,
what
no.
I
So,
do?
so what I mean
No.
is, yeah, yes, but from a more personal perspective, if you like, or human stuff, because trying to help families, trying to help people emotionally is can be very draining, and you can't do
Okay.
that unless you really care about people, and you can't teach it, because the one dynamic you cannot teach somebody is how to care about somebody that's not connected to you,
Yeah.
and you really have to
I
invest in that. So, and that's
yeah.
why it's a why do you care?
Yeah. Well, why do people go up to Mount Everest, right? Because it's there and they can.
Mm.
And for me, I think I can. And it's a challenge. And the versatility of the situations. Every situation in family is different. And for me, it's yeah, I love the challenge. Um, I know that I say this humbly, I'm pretty good at
Yeah.
doing that. And I love to see the success.
Yes.
When those two siblings start talking again with each other, right? And suddenly the family's whole, and you see that incredible feeling of satisfaction, of happiness. And maybe this starts in the beginning of my career, and a very quick. I started my career as a tax lawyer,
Yes.
and it was always very gratifying when you gave a family, someone a solution, and he saved $500
Yeah.
on his tax declaration, right? Direct, instant gratification, and they shake your hand, they pay your bill, whatever. Direct gratification. Now the gratification takes harder work, but it's so much bigger
Mm.
than the $500 tax savings.
Yeah.
It is it's huge, and to feel I'm a empathetical. I think I am an empathetical person, or at least in this stage of my life, I became much more empathetical than I was when I was younger. Um, for me, that gives an incredible sense of fulfillment, and now that sounds very weird and maybe, but doing good. What I'm doing is with the intention of doing good. Does it always work? Is it always super successful? Not always, right? But most of the times, yes. And that creates happiness. And so I enjoy the journey, what I'm doing. It also provides for my family. And so why not?
Yeah.
Right? I found my mojo. I found my groove in life.
Because it's interesting. The only thing I could come up with is I had initially in my 30s, like late 20s, early 30s, I'd got into trouble with the law, and I didn't go to prison, but nearly. And so I was just like, okay, obviously life isn't working out for you, so you need to do something different. And I actually went to some nighttime writing classes, and I was just sat next to a lady who was who managed care teams, and she was just like, I think you'd be good working with a young guy I've got who's got a head injury, because he could do with probably a male rather than all the females. He doesn't. And this kind of, I was like, okay, I'll give it a go, explain my situation. And she was like, yeah, that's fine with us. It'll probably appeal to him more. So, I mean, knowing that you're not, you've had your own problems. And what I realised after a couple of years of working with all these young men who had like head injuries and stuff is I actually just felt useful. I actually just felt that I was doing something useful. For the first time in my life, I just thought, actually done something that makes a difference. It was that simple. Just the realization that all my previous jobs where I was just doing paperwork or pushing things around, I never felt any connection to anything I was doing. And then just one day I was just like, oh, I'm actually doing something useful. Mm.
I like that word of connection.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I had a really rewarding career. I great positions.
Mm.
I got great salaries and so on. But I never really felt connected. I was not on a mission somehow.
Yeah.
I was there for my own skin in the game, and not very much else. Obviously, I was managing teams and so on, but was pretty much me in the center of it. And here, um, and maybe it has to do with maturity. I don't know, uh, but I really feel that I can be helpful
Yeah.
to people, and that's just a good feeling.
Yeah. It is. It is.
No.
How did this, like, let's come full circle. How did this get you to write the book?
So I always had this dream of writing. When I was 16, I love history, and I always wanted to write, but I also am a great procrastinator. So for 40 years or so. And so finally, I started to write kind of a biography, which I found pretty good, and so I started talking with some people in the book business. I have a friend who used to be the editor of the International Herald Tribune. I asked him for some pointers, and so I came to a book coach, and she said, "Okay, so so she made all these questions. So what are you doing, and what's your interest?" And so I gave her my manuscript, and she said, "Rene, it's a nice story for your kids and so on, but if you want to write a book, that's not going to work. Tell me more about yourself. Tell me what you do and whatever." I said, how about? And so of whatever I wrote, the first 80 pages, they went in the shredder. They're not in the shredder. They're somewhere there, on the computer
Yeah.
hard disk. And I started to rewrite my story, my life story, actually, in many respects, but seen through the eyes of a family business coach. And the more I started writing, the better it became, the more fun I had in it. And then in one moment, it started literally to flow from my pen,
Yeah.
my keyboard. And it was an amazing journey. And so I felt this was a story that's going to help many families dealing with the issues that I've family seen suffering through in my own family and families that I've been working with. And so that's where it came from, and a practical book, that insightful, I think. And I loved that idea of getting my voice out there on a broader scale. And I was supported by a great team, an editorial team, very professional people that helped me thinking through all the mistakes that I was doing in the writing and the layouts of the chapters and so on. So I felt supported also there. Because if you've never done this, I'm not, trained writer. I didn't do any writer course. Um, and actually liked it so much that I started writing my second book.
Oh, no.
I my family is concerned, but I use my in between time to write more. Sunday mornings at 5 I wake up, and I got an incredible passion for writing. I know it's something that happened over the last 5 years, something that was buried. I wanted, as I mentioned, when I was 16, I wanted to write something, and then girlfriends and other things
Hey,
started happening.
girlfriends have a lot to answer for. So, do you think writing could be your next curveball?
Um, well, it's my I love to write blogs. I see something, a quote or whatever, and it triggers a reaction. To finance my book, also because writing is it's if you self-publish, it's an expensive hobby,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, David. Is I had acquired when I was still working in a bank in Switzerland a Rolex watch,
Yes.
and so I sold my Rolex, and I wrote and just the thought came up, hey, that would be funny to why did I sell my Rolex? And that's the story, why I sold my Rolex, or the day I sold my Rolex. And so I have these ideas, and also from reading lots of books, there's quotes in it, and I start writing blogs about it, and it doesn't take me too much time, and I write an 800 word blog, and I have incredible, I don't know, it gives me an incredible satisfaction and joy to put it on my website and to get it out there, and probably nobody reads it.
Yeah,
Doesn't
but
matter. It's mine. I
yeah.
created it, and I think it's just beautiful, right?
Mm.
That's what I think. I don't know what other people think, and so I have so much joy in writing. It's another way for me to express my deeper feelings, my thoughts. I can be abstract. I can synthesize stuff which sometimes it's harder to say it that exact in words. And the writing also helps me in my coaching because since I'm thinking more consciously through many situations and ideas, it also helps me in my creative work as a coach. It helps me to build a wider, and it sounds weird as well, maybe a repertoire. I'm actually
Yeah, no, it
filling
does.
up my jukebox with more records.
No, I
Um,
understand that because one of the things I think people don't understand about writing is it encourages you just to explore the things you think about without judging yourself for it. I'll just, like you say, you see an inspiration, you hear a quote, you see something happen at a coffee shop, and if you feel an emotional reaction to it, okay, well, I'll write that down and I'll just observe what that interaction was within myself.
Yeah, and then there's also the other part. You when you become a writer, and today I would say I'm a writer, humble, my very
You
small
have,
scale writer. I also I also become more conscious about what's happening around me,
mm-hmm.
and I start observing. I become a better observer. And so I always have my little notebook, well, which my telephone with me. And
Yeah,
if I observe something, I make a little note of it. And I just keep it there. And then regularly I go through my notes, say, okay, yeah, that's something I want to write about.
yeah.
And so I become, it's almost like doing that. It's like you start tasting the journey of your life better, deeper. You see more colors and texture to whatever happens around you. I don't want to sound too poetic, but
No, I
really,
agree.
that's
It's I find I stopped writing blogs when I started podcasting. Time more than anything because I have a full-time job and podcasting is my hobby. But the thing I love about it is the enrichment I get from listening to other people. But the other thing that can be difficult about that is when I'm having conversations with people, because like you say, you want to remain humble, and you don't kind of want to brag. But the amount of times somebody will be having a conversation, and I'll be, oh, I spoke to Rene on my podcast, and he said, and you always kind of bringing up these people that you've had these great conversations with,
yeah.
and it's this tapestry, and it just gets richer and richer and richer because I'm always exploring, but I get to do it with other people, but that's what writing did for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the analogy of also again what you mentioned about podcast and getting insights, and that's something definitely from all the clients I work with, they teach me something,
Yeah,
and that's beautiful as well.
it is, and it's always an opportunity. I find I have this principle about, especially with the world we have today, is everybody focuses. Nobody focuses on what we have in common. Just that simple. What are the things we have in common? And I just find that if you can focus, like with family dynamics, if you can focus on what you do well together, what you do agree on, the degrees of separation are not as vast as they seem. And but like you were saying, you have to walk around the problem from a different perspective, so you get a different point of view, and it's how you navigate that.
And the interesting thing of that is, by doing that, by being prepared to look at the situation from different perspectives, you always find better answers
Yes.
to the problem. Maybe not the best answer. Whatever the best answer is, perfection doesn't exist, but you continue to find better answers. And that's wonderful.
It is just, and also, actually, I just want to qualify what you said there, because you did say something actually. Um, Perfection isn't possible, and so you don't have to pursue perfection. You can just pursue different options.
Yes. Yes. Perfection and because um I had and that idea of perfection was I had a friend in Argentina. His name was Oleg Kotsarev, and he was the first violinist of a very famous Argentine ensemble. It's called the Camerata Bariloche. And he was getting to his 80s and he was still playing. But he would get a bit rheumatic and old, and so he did the last tour. And in the last tour, I think it was in the Theater Colón, which is a beautiful theater in Buenos Aires. And he played violin, and he got a standing ovation. And um, and he said to me afterwards, said, Rene, they thought I was playing perfect, but I knew I wasn't.
Wow.
And so perfection can be perceived by others. This is perfect. But for the people that are seeking it, there's never the moment that it's perfect. The guy that makes a world record
Yeah.
in the Olympics, he gets on the stage and he's thinking about how can I break the next world record, right?
I,
It's not like, oh, I've done it, I did it. Of course, he celebrates and he's happy and it's amazing. It is absolutely a top moment in his life. But the moment he steps down after hearing the hymn, the national hymn, and the tears and the heroes round he made in the stadium, and he goes back to the locker room, his thoughts go, okay, what's next?
when you said that, I don't know why I immediately thought of Johnny Wilkinson, who was a rugby
Yes.
player for England in the world. So you know who I'm on about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Did you know the winning kick that he kicked for the goal that won England the World Cup? When they went to talk to him to celebrate that, the first thing he talked about was how awful the kick was. And so you just won the World Cup for your country. And he talked about straight away how he didn't connect with it properly. And he was lucky it went over. And he wasn't happy with the kick.
Yes.
And he just won the World Cup. And he's just like, hey, that's
What's wrong in this picture, right? Or what can I learn from this?
yeah. And but yeah. Where can people find you?
Oh, the best way is to go to my website, www.renesonneveld.com, or they can buy my book, The Elephant in the Family Room. It's on all the big publications, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and so on. They have it. That's the easiest way. Funny enough, there's some clients they called on me, new clients, and I asked them. Normally most of my business is through referral, and they asked me. I asked them, where did you find me? And they said, I found you in ChatGTP.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yes.
That that
New life. What can I say?
that is brilliant. My last question, which is just my fun random question. I want you to imagine you have a time machine. The time machine is a car of your choice. What car would you have? Where would you go? And what would be playing on the radio?
I would drive a the first or the second model Chevrolet Corvette,
Nice.
the old ones, Cabriolet.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Stunning.
Probably I would have the Beach Boys on the radio.
Perfect.
Um, it would be on the highway number one between San Francisco and California. And I would be, and let's just assume that this highway is in heaven. Okay.
Yep.
And I would look down, my hands, my left hand out of the window. I would look down and I see my kids having a fulfilling life.
Nice.
That's what I would like to see if I could travel in a time machine.
What would be playing? What music? Oh,
Yeah,
Beach Boys.
probably
Sorry.
the Beach Boys.
Sorry.
Yeah, the Beach Boys. Yeah.
That
Some
is
some fun music, entertaining, nothing aggressive.
that would be beautiful. Rene, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, David. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you. And that was Rene. And right at the end there, I was so sort of captured in the Corvette in heaven, looking down at his children. Even though he said he'd be listening to the Beach Boys, I went and asked, well, what music would it be? And I heard it, and it just didn't register. I was so caught up in the picture. And much of what Rene said is about how we get caught up in the picture that we've built. And sometimes, if you can just step away and look at it from a new perspective, you can see a different picture. It's not easy. It's not for everybody. But hopefully you heard some of what Rene said. And if you are having problems with your family and you need to resolve it, maybe the elephant in the family room is a good place to start. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that's listened and who watches. Please do take care of yourself, and wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.